Do you know that the Miller-Coleman family circus is an exciting place to live? You might have caught a glimpse of that from time to time down here in the children's celebration, my little boy climbing over me like a jungle gym. Something is usually burning at our house. There are roller coasters of emotional upheaval. We swing from delight and then immediately to abject misery and back within, seconds. Happens all day long. Nothing ever stays straightened up or put away for longer than 5 minutes at our house. At our house, we are experts on stepping on painful or gross stuff in bare feet. Also, Legos are no problem. We are old pros at that. I don't even curse very often anymore when I step on a Lego. I'm that good. You know what? Grapes are okay too. I can step on a grape in bare feet and wipe up the mess in one smooth motion. I don't even stop to wonder what it was that just popped under my foot. I know what it was. It was a grape. How about this? I can even peel someone else's used Band-Aid off the bottom of my bare foot without missing a beat. Now, it has taken a lot of practice, but I got there. My personal goal as a mother is to achieve a clean kitchen at one point in every day. Doesn't have to linger long. It might be right before I leave for work or right before bed, but for one fleeting moment in each day, the kitchen will be clean. Most of the time, it looks like the aftermath of a tornado. It's all about managing expectations. One moment each day. The latest drama in our family circus is this. Our littlest guy, Lawrence, who likes to climb on me, he's 5. He is learning to swim. Now, he's pretty good, and he gets a lot of practice, but there's this threshold he's working on that's hard for him. What happens is this. His brother Leo, who's taller and the stronger swimmer, heads out into deep water at the pool. And Lawrence wants to go too, right? Fair. He wants to swim in that deeper water where he can't touch yet. But he only wants to do it if he can wear his floaty vest. You know what I'm talking about? It's like the wings and then the chest thing. Okay, the problem is that the floaty vest isn't allowed in that part of the pool. It's not really safe. It's not, Coast Guard approved or whatever. He needs to have an adult with him. Or he needs to be in shallower water. He's not ready for that yet. Lawrence isn't big enough or a strong enough swimmer to follow his brother into the deep end yet. He'd like to be. He will be soon if he keeps working on it. But that's not now. For now, he's stuck in the shallow end. And it's a real pickle. I kept thinking about the floaty vest this week. I don't know if they had water wings back in ancient Rome, but I like to imagine that they did. I'm picturing Paul sitting in his prison cell, writing this letter to the church at Philippi, trying to coach the Philippians to swim without their floaty wings. Right? Like Lawrence, they're almost ready. But Paul's worried they're not quite there yet. And his job is to help them grow stronger in their faith, to become mature enough to swim in the deep end without him for support. So he sits down to write this letter, like a coach going over the basics one more time. Paul starts out by turning them toward each other. He says, stick together. Make sure you have one another's backs. Teamwork makes the dream work, church. When it seems like you're in over your head, find a buddy. That's key. Better yet, put in the time and energy to build a community among one another where you can be sure that someone's going to pull you up when you start sinking. Every time. Paul says that's next level stuff for the church, but it's where they're heading. He can see it for them. So he says practice. Practice building authentic community with one another. Be the kind of people who lift each other up. And he says maturing in faith means becoming weaker, not stronger. Say that one more time. Becoming mature in faith means becoming weaker, not stronger. Paul's talking about humility. And it makes me think of that Bob Dylan song. There's this line in My Back Pages. It goes, but I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Right? You know the song? He's talking about how that false confidence of youth, those certainties and black and white assumptions just fall apart with age and wisdom. Paul's coaching the Philippians into that kind of humility, right? Because that kind of humility is the foundation for the real lasting relationships and community he wants for them. They go together like peanut butter and jelly, right? Have each other's back, practice humility. Somebody once said, you can either be married or you can be right. Ever heard that? You can either be married or you can be right. Right? It's along the same lines of what Paul's trying to get across. Back to basics. Stick together. Have each other's backs. Practice humility. Don't assume you know it all. Even if you're pretty sure you do know it all, pause, reflect, ask yourself what you might be missing. I am not sure what is on fire in your kitchen these days. I'm not even sure what's on fire in my kitchen most days. It may not be the same, right? But most of us go through seasons when it seems like more is demanded of us than we have to give. It can feel like we're just barely keeping our heads above water, floaty vests and all. The deep end is a scary place to be when you're not sure you're ready for it. Maybe you are angrier than you thought you would be about the road decision. Right? We knew it was coming, but now here we are. The world is different than it was just a few days ago. I have fewer rights today than I did when I was born. If my mom knew what was happening right now, she would be raging, livid. I'm not livid. I'm more like numb. It's like that feeling we had back in the teeth of the pandemic when it felt like being in a boxing ring where the punches just keep coming but no one ever rings the bell. Remember that feeling? Well, I've got it again. It's back. That's where I am. And I'll speak for myself. I don't want to exclude the possibility that you may be in a different place. You may be relieved by the Roe verdict. That's possible. I can respect that perspective even though I don't share it. I can imagine what that might feel like. I can imagine feeling so strongly that abortion is inhumane, that curtailing its availability seems like progress. I don't feel that way, but I can imagine it. And I do feel empathy towards someone in that place. One of the things that I love about this congregation is the covenantal basis of our shared life. It's not believing all the same things the same way that makes us a church family. It's our commitment to stick with one another. It's the promises we make in that covenant every week to share life, And that's harder than it sounds when we've got big things to disagree about. But that's what makes us special. It's who we are. We're the kind of people who are willing to try swimming in the spiritual deep end without floaties. The kind of spiritual maturity Paul's coaching us into isn't where I usually live. It's a stretch for me too. It's a whole level up. And it will take some real purposeful practice to get there, both individually and collectively as a community. For me, it helps to remember how small I am and how much bigger God's love is than my worst mistakes, right? Remembering that gives me the courage to try letting some things go, like the need to be right or to go it alone. It takes a lot of practice to admit when things are overwhelming and to ask for help. It's hard. It's harder than learning to step on Legos without cursing, let me tell you. But Paul knows we can do hard things. He sees that in us. And so he pushes us to see certainty in anything but Jesus as trust placed in lukewarm half-truth. Instead, he says, pour yourselves out. Pour yourselves out for one another. Become weak if you would be strong in your faith, and take Jesus as a model. Jesus shows us up close and in person how unshakable is God's love. How that same love poured out for all of us is stronger even than death, unflinching, steadfast, all-powerful, and entirely poured out for us. Pour yourselves out for one another, says Paul. Let the same mind that was in Christ also be in you. He says, it's time to work on building up that direct line with Jesus instead of relying on him so much. Right? If humility is hard to practice, and it is, this is harder yet, building that direct line. It's almost impossible to wrap our brains around the fact of God's love incarnate. It's so hard. In fact, it might actually be impossible to do it with our brains. And that's why Paul sidesteps the brain for just a minute and he goes straight for the heart here. There are some truths the heart can only confess in song. Am I right, choir? Right? It's true. So Paul sings us a love song filled with grace to encourage us on our way. Maybe you remember when President Obama addressed the morning congregation at Mother Emanuel AME in Charleston following the massacre there. He spoke clearly, words of hope and comfort and encouragement, and then he broke into song. Do you remember? Remember how he sang? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Right to the heart. There are times when the heart can sing a faith well beyond what the mind can comprehend. Paul sings a love song to the church in Philippi right here in this letter. If you read along in the Pew Bible, you could have seen that verses 5 to 11 are broken out into verse. It's a hymn. Right? He lays out the key points so our brains can follow them. Stick together, he says. Don't assume you know it all. Stay focused on Jesus. But then he brings it home to the heart in a song. Paul sings, "Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself." It's a love song. A love song that tells the power of Jesus, the love of God incarnate, poured out for all people, for all people. A song of love high and broad like a storm rolling over the Flint Hills 50,000 feet high. Paul sings the power of heaven and earth made flesh in one human life, humbled for our sake, so that we could learn to be humbled before God and one another, so that we might learn to extend grace to one another because we have already received grace beyond all measure. And for that, beloved, I give God thanks and praise. Thanks be to God.